You flaked out, Bianca. He emptied our account and changed the locks. That same night at the launch gala, I called the vote. The keycard doesn't work. I'm standing at the glass doors of Halcyon Labs at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, a lukewarm oat milk latte sweating in my left hand, and the little reader is blinking red instead of green. Red, red, red. I tap it a fourth time, and I can see my own reflection floating over the empty reception desk we spent $900 on at a warehouse auction. And inside the lobby, the plants I water every Monday are exactly where I left them, and the badge in my hand is exactly the badge that opened this door yesterday. Then Grant's voice comes through the intercom speaker, tinny and calm, the way you'd tell a delivery driver he has the wrong address. "Bianca, go home. You flaked out. Everybody knows it. Don't make this ugly." The speaker clicks off. The latte is still warm against my palm, and the door is still locked. And I can hear, faintly, the espresso machine we bought together humming inside without me. He thought a red light on a card reader was the end of the sentence. He had no idea it was the first word of mine. He'd forgotten something. Grant had spent 3 years assuming the paperwork under this company said what he wanted it to say, and he had never once gone back and read it. I had. I'd read it in 2021 at a kitchen table at 2 a.m, and I had never forgotten a single line. Let me take you back, because the locked door is the end, not the beginning, and you deserve to see how a man talks himself off a roof, one confident step at a time. I grew up in Corpus Christi, on the wrong side of the crosstown, in a stucco house the color of an old Band-Aid. My mother, Alma, cleaned rooms at the Omni downtown for 22 years and could fold a fitted sheet into a perfect square in under a minute. My father drove a delivery route for a bakery supply company until his knees gave out. We were not poor in the dramatic way people mean when they want your pity. We were poor in the ordinary way, the way where you learn exactly what $40 is worth and you never, ever forget. I learned to read a receipt before I learned to ride a bike. I learned that the people who owned things and the people who cleaned things were not smarter or dumber than each other. They simply knew or didn't know where their name was written down. I got out on a scholarship and a bus ticket. Texas State, San Marcos, accounting degree, 2013, 3.8 GPA, and a work-study job in the bursar's office, where I learned that most of the world runs on documents nobody bothers to read. I moved to Austin with 2 suitcases and a futon that smelled like the previous owner's cat. I did the books for a food truck, then for 4 food trucks, then for a small chain of yoga studios, then for a 19-location coffee franchise. I was good. Not flashy, good the way a load-bearing wall is good. You don't notice it until it's gone. I met Grant Whitaker in the spring of 2019 at a demo night at Capital Factory, that startup hub downtown on the 16th floor, where everyone wears the same gray Allbirds and says, "Scalable, too much." He was pitching a battery management idea he could not do the math on. I was there because a founder I did books for had dragged me along. Grant had the jaw and the vowels, private school in Dallas, a lacrosse team handshake, a way of saying your name like it was a favor. He was charming in the specific way that men are charming when they have never once been told no by someone who could enforce it. His idea was real, though. That was the maddening thing. He'd found a genuine gap. Mid-size solar installers were bleeding money on battery diagnostics, and there was a software layer nobody had built. Grant had the relationships. His father golfed with half the energy guys in Texas, and he had the front-of-room shine. What he did not have was anyone who could turn the idea into a company that actually functioned. He couldn't model unit economics. He couldn't read a term sheet. He thought burn rate was a motivational concept. I could do all of it. We started Halcyon Labs in October 2019 at that same kitchen table I mentioned, in my apartment off South Lamar, over a bottle of $19 Malbec and a legal pad. And here is the part Grant would spend 3 years forgetting, so pay attention now the way he didn't. When we split the company, I put in the seed money. $31,000, my entire savings. Everything Alma's fitted sheets and my spreadsheets had built. Grant put in $6,000 and a promise of the network. So on the original cap table, the one we drew up that night and had a real attorney formalize 2 weeks later, I held 60% of Halcyon Labs and Grant held 40. 60-40. My name, my majority, my company that let him stand at the front of the room. I want to be honest because the good years were good. For a while, Grant and I were a genuinely great team. He'd come back from a dinner with a signed pilot, and I'd have the contract clean and the invoicing set up before he'd finished bragging about it. We won a spot in an accelerator in 2020. We closed a seed round in 2021, $1.9 million from a mix of angels and a small Austin fund called Brazos Line Ventures. I built the whole thing. The accounting, the vendor contracts, the 2 hires that mattered, including Devon Okafor, who left a comfortable controller job at a healthcare company to be our CFO because he believed in what we were doing, and because, he told me later, you were the only person in that office who ever answered a straight question with a straight answer. Here's the thing about that 2021 raise, and it matters, so hold on to it. When the seed round came in, the lawyers papered a new investor agreement and a stock option pool and a stack of documents 4 inches thick. Grant handled the relationship side of the raise, and I handled the terms. And somewhere in the excitement, everyone, the investors, the associates, even our own outside counsel at the time, started treating Halcyon like a 50-50 founder company, because that's what Grant said in every room, and nobody had a reason to check. The new paperwork diluted us both proportionally for the investors' shares, but it never, ever changed the ratio between Grant and me. 60-40 of the founder equity, untouched. I knew it. I filed the original cap table and the stock ledger in a fireproof box at home, and I never brought it up. Because when things are good, you don't wave your majority around like a threat. That was my mistake and my weapon, both. I filed it away. I file everything away. Remember that. The erosion didn't come all at once. It never does. It came like a slow leak under a sink. You smell it before you see it, and by the time you see the swelling in the wood, it's been rotting for months. The first wrong note was the desk plaque. Small thing, stupid thing. When we moved into our real office in early 2022, a 3,400 square foot space in a converted warehouse on East 6th, exposed brick, the whole Austin cliché, $4,100 a month, I brought in a little pine wood desk plaque my mother had given me the day I signed the lease. It said, "World's Okayest Boss," in faded engraved letters. She thought it was hilarious. I kept it propped on my desk. And one morning in March, I came in and Grant had moved my desk. Not asked, moved it. He'd taken the corner spot with the good window, the one we'd agreed was shared, and put my desk in the interior near the server closet, and set my plaque on top of a box like a thing to be dealt with later. When I asked, he smiled that private school smile and said, "Optics, Bianca. When investors come in, they need to see the vision at the front. You're the engine room. That's a compliment." The engine room. I said, okay. I moved my plaque to the new desk. I filed it away. The second note was the LLC filing. In April 2022, Grant cleaned up our corporate housekeeping, his words, and had a new attorney, a slick guy named Preston from a firm his father recommended, redo some of our state filings. He told me it was routine. He asked me to sign a stack of documents on a Friday at 4:45 while a vendor was waiting. I did not sign them. I told him I'd take them home and read them over the weekend, and he laughed and said, "You accountants," like caution was a personality flaw. I read all 40 pages that weekend at my kitchen table with a highlighter. Buried on page 26 was a line that would have made Grant the sole managing member with unilateral authority over the company's bank accounts. I brought it back Monday, unsigned, and said I'd found a few things to clean up. He said Preston must have used a bad template. He never mentioned it again. Neither did I. but I photographed every page first. The third note was Devin. In the summer of 2022, Grant started freezing Devin out. Small stuff, moving finance meetings to times Devin couldn't make, going around him to approve expenses, telling investors that Devin was more of a bookkeeper than a real CFO. Devin came to me one evening, both of us the last ones in the office, the AC ticking off, and he said quietly, "Bianca, I don't know what he's building, but he's building it without us. He asked me last week whether the bank would let him change the signatory authority with just one founder's approval." The fluorescent light over the server closet was buzzing. My coffee had gone cold. I said, "What did you tell him?" Devin said, "I told him no. Then I came to find you." That was the moment Devin became more than a colleague. That was the conscience in the building, and he'd just chosen a side without being asked. The fourth note, the one that told me exactly where this was going, was the investors. In the fall of 2022, we started raising a Series A. We were targeting $8 million, and the lead was going to be a bigger fund out of Silicon Valley with an Austin office. Grant took every investor meeting himself now. He'd stopped inviting me. When I pushed, he said the VCs connected better with a single, clear founder voice, and that having two of us in the room muddied the cap table story. Muddied the cap table story. I remember the phrase landing in my stomach like a swallowed ice cube. Because there was nothing muddy about that cap table. It was the clearest document in the building. It said 60-40, and Grant had just told me, without knowing it, that he had been telling investors a different number. I started keeping a second set of records at home. Not fake ones, realer ones. Every email, every board deck he sent to investors, which I still received because I was, whether he liked it or not, on the cap table and legally entitled to them. I noticed he'd started sending decks that listed the founders as Grant Whitaker, CEO, and team. Not Bianca Reyes, co-founder. Team. I printed every one. I dated every one. I said nothing. Cold composure is not the absence of feeling. I want to be clear about that, because I think people imagine women like me as ice. I was not ice. I cried in my car in the Whole Foods parking lot on Lamar more than once. The good, ugly kind of crying, forehead on the wheel. I felt the humiliation of the interior desk and the engine room and the team every single day. But I had learned something in Alma's world a long time ago. You can feel everything and still not move until it's time. Feelings are weather. Ownership is geology. I let the weather rage, and I stood on the rock. Then came December 2022, and the blow. The real one. The one you walked in on at the top of this. Here's what actually happened, in order, because it deserves to be told with weight. On Monday, December 12th, Grant called an all-hands and announced that Halcyon Labs would launch its flagship product, the diagnostics platform, the whole reason the company existed, at a gala on Friday, December 16th at a renovated venue on Rainey Street. Investors, press, the whole Austin energy tech scene. He'd been planning it for weeks without me. Fine, I could work with a stage. On Tuesday, December 13th, at 6:02 in the morning, before I got to the office, Grant walked into our Frost Bank branch with Preston, the attorney, and a document that he claimed gave him sole authority. And he moved the entire company operating balance, $684,000, our whole runway, into a new account under an entity called Halcyon Holdings, LLC, which he had formed in Delaware 3 weeks earlier, and which listed exactly one member, him. He emptied the account that paid Devin, that paid our 2 engineers, that paid the rent on the brick and the window he'd taken. Then he changed the locks, rekeyed the whole office, and reprogrammed the badge system through a vendor who had no idea he was helping with a coup. My red blinking card, the espresso machine humming for someone else. And then, this is the part that I think he thought was clever, he got ahead of the story. Tuesday afternoon, he emailed our whole investor list and told them that his co-founder had flaked out, that I'd become unreliable and disengaged, that I was stepping away for personal reasons, and that he would be carrying the vision forward solo. He told Brazos Line Ventures I'd flaked. He told the Series A lead I'd flaked. He used that word, flaked, like I was a paint job. Devin forwarded me the email at 4:40 with 3 words. He sent this. So there I was, Tuesday morning, on the wrong side of the glass, a warm latte in a cold hand, told to go home. I did go home, but not the way he meant. I did not cry in the Whole Foods parking lot that day. Something else happened, and I've thought about it a lot since, trying to name it. It wasn't rage. Rage is loud, and Grant had already proven he owned all the loud rooms. It was quieter than that. It was the click of a lock turning the other way. I sat in my car outside my own locked office, and I felt the last 3 years, the interior desk, the engine room, the team, the muddy cap table, all of it, line up in a single clean row, like columns in a ledger that finally balances. And I understood, with a calm that frightened me a little, that Grant had just done the one thing I could not have done for myself. He had put it in writing. He'd made it real and dated and traceable and criminal adjacent and provable. I made one phone call, not to my mother, not yet, to Renee Castellano. Renee is a corporate attorney with a firm on Congress Avenue, 14th floor, and I'd met her 4 years earlier when she did the real formation work on Halcyon, the 60/40 documents, the fireproof box documents. I'd kept paying her a small retainer, $400 a quarter, for exactly no reason I could have articulated at the time, except that some part of me had always known this Tuesday was coming. She answered on the second ring. I said, "Renee, it's Bianca Reyes. Grant just emptied the account, changed the locks, and told our investors I flaked out." There was a short silence, and then Renee said the sentence I will love her for until I die. She said, "Bianca, tell me something. Did we ever amend the founder split?" And I said, "No, it's still 60/40. I have the original in a box." I heard her exhale. Then I heard her smile. "Then Grant," she said, "just committed a felony against a company he does not control." Bring me the box. Here is the plain English version, the one I want you to have before Friday night so nothing gets muddy. I owned the majority of Halcyon Labs, 60% of the founder's shares, never diluted below the majority even after the seed investors came in, because of how those documents were structured. I still held the controlling voting block. Grant did not run the company. He had never run the company. He had run the front of the room while standing on ground that belonged to me. Everything he'd done Tuesday morning, the account, the locks, the sole managing member story, depended on a 50-50 world that had never legally existed. He'd built a coup on a cap table he made up in his own mouth. And a majority shareholder has a right the minority does not. The right to call a meeting of the board. The right to a vote. The right to remove an officer. The next 72 hours were the most disciplined of my life, and there was not one moment of violence in them, unless you count the violence of a well-organized binder. Renee and I met that Tuesday night in her office with the box between us. She went through it like a surgeon. Original cap table, October 2019. 60/40, signed, notarized. The 2021 seed documents showing the founder ratio preserved, the stock ledger, the bylaws. And this was the piece that made Renee actually laugh out loud. The bylaws we'd adopted in 2019, which nobody had looked at since, gave any holder of a majority of voting shares the right to call a special meeting of stockholders with as little as 48 hours' notice and to act by written consent. Grant had signed those bylaws himself, in blue ink. He'd probably never read past page 2. Wednesday, we built the record. Devin came to Renee's office on his lunch break and, over a sad al pastor taco from the truck downstairs, laid out the financial trail. The wire to Halcyon Holdings, LLC, the $684,000, the Delaware filing dated 3 weeks earlier, the signatory change document Grant had used at Frost, which, Devin had quietly pulled the record, bore a representation that Grant was the sole authorized officer, a representation that was flatly, provably false. Devin had also, God bless his careful heart, preserved the email where Grant asked him back in the summer whether one founder could change the bank authority alone. Intent dated in Grant's own words. Wednesday night, I called Alma. I told her everything. She was quiet for a while, and then she said in Spanish, "Mija, you always did read the receipt." That was all. It was enough. Thursday, Renee did the surgical part. She drafted and served, properly, legally, by email and by certified courier to the office Grant had locked me out of, a formal notice of a special meeting of the stockholders of Halcyon Labs, Inc., to be held Friday, December 16th, with a single item on the agenda: the removal of Grant Whitaker as an officer and director and the appointment of a new officer. As majority stockholder, I had the votes to pass it the instant the meeting opened. Renee also prepared a separate demand letter regarding the $684,000 and the fraudulent Frost Bank representation, and a courtesy heads-up to Brazos Line Ventures and the Series A lead that the co-founder who flaked out was in fact the majority owner of the company and would be addressing them shortly. We did not tip the timing. We let Grant keep planning his party. Because here is the thing about a launch gala. Grant had spent weeks and, it turned out, $11,000 of company money he no longer controlled, assembling every single person whose opinion of Halcyon Labs mattered into one room on one night with a microphone and a stage and a spotlight. He'd built me the perfect room. He'd sent the invitations himself. I RSVP'd yes. Friday, December 16th. The venue on Rainey Street was one of those restored Victorians they've hollowed out into an event space. String lights in the live oaks out back, a bar built from an old shipping crate. 200 people in the kind of Austin formal wear that means a nice blazer over a good t-shirt. I wore a plain charcoal suit I'd bought at the Nordstrom Rack on Capital of Texas Highway for $140. And I carried, in a tote bag, a little pine wood desk plaque that said, "World's Okayest Boss." I don't fully know why I brought it. Maybe I wanted my mother in the room. Maybe I wanted the one honest object in a building full of Grant's staging. Renee was there, in a black suit with a leather portfolio. Devin was there, in the good navy jacket he saved for board meetings, standing near the back with his hands folded like a man at church. Grant was up front, of course, at the center of the light, holding a glass of something amber, telling a cluster of investors a story with his whole jaw. I saw him clock me across the room. I watched him decide I was not a threat. He actually raised his glass to me, a little ironic toast, engine room to CEO, and turned back to his audience. At 8:30, Grant took the stage. The room hushed. He did the whole thing, the vision, the market, the solo journey, the slide with his name and the word founder in 40-point type. He thanked the team. He did not say my name. He clicked to his last slide, the big product reveal, and he said into the microphone, warm as anything, "Some of you have asked about my former co-founder. All I'll say is, you build a company with the people who show up, and some people just flake out." The room laughed, a little uncomfortably. The word landed on me one last time. Flake. I stood up. I did not shout. Renee had coached me on exactly this, and I'd have done it anyway, because loud was Grant's language, and I don't speak it. I walked to the front, into the edge of his spotlight, and I said, clearly enough to carry, "Actually, Grant, before you reveal the product, the stockholders of Halcyon Labs are holding a special meeting. Right now. It's on the agenda you were served yesterday. I'd hate for our investors to miss it." The look on his face is the thing I'll keep. It was not anger. Anger would have meant he understood. It was confusion, the specific, dawning confusion of a man who has just heard a sentence in a language he suddenly realizes he never learned. His eyes went to Renee, who had stepped up beside me and opened her portfolio. They went to Devin at the back, who did not look away. They went to the investors, who had gone very still. Bianca, this is not the venue, Grant said, and his voice did the thing. It cracked upward. The microphone caught it and threw it across 200 people. Renee spoke then, calm and flat, a reader of documents to a room that lived and died by documents. My name is Renee Castellano. I'm corporate counsel. I'm holding the certified stock ledger of Halcyon Labs Incorporated as of formation and as amended through the 2021 financing. Ms. Reyes holds 60% of the founders' voting shares. She has held the majority continuously since October of 2019. Mr. Whitaker holds 40%. She let it sit for 1 full second. There is no version of this company in which Mr. Whitaker controls it. There never was. I watched the number move through the crowd. 60. I watched the investors from Brazos Line turn their heads toward Grant in unison, like a field of sunflowers deciding the sun had lied. I watched the Series A lead set down his drink. Grant said, The cap table was restructured. Everybody knows we're 50. No, Renee said, it wasn't. You said it was. You said it in rooms. But no document in the corporate record ever changed the founder split. I have all of them. You signed the bylaws that let this meeting happen. She slid a single page across the edge of the stage toward him. His own signature, blue ink, 2019. Then I said the quiet part, the part I'd earned. On Tuesday morning, you moved $684,000 of this company's money into a Delaware LLC you own alone. You told Frost Bank you were the sole authorized officer. You weren't. You told these investors I flaked out. I didn't. I own this company, Grant. I always did. You've just been standing at the front of it. The room was so silent I could hear the string lights buzzing through the open back doors. Renee turned to the investors, to the whole room, and said, As the holder of a majority of the voting shares, Ms. Reyes is calling the question. The single item before the stockholders is the removal of Grant Whitaker as an officer and director of Halcyon Labs, effective immediately, and the appointment of Ms. Reyes as chief executive officer. A majority carries. Ms. Reyes? I said, I vote my shares in favor. The measure passes, Renee said, 60% to 40. Mr. Whitaker, as of this moment, you hold no office and no authority in this company. The funds you moved will be returned by Monday, or the matter goes to the district attorney. Your counsel has the letter. You are welcome to keep your 40% of shares. You are not welcome behind the locks you changed. Grant stood in his own spotlight with the microphone dead in his hand. The amber drink was gone. I don't know when he'd put it down. His face had drained to the color of the tablecloths. He looked out at 200 people, the investors he'd lied to, the press he'd invited, the engineers whose paychecks he'd frozen. And he opened his mouth, and what came out was not a defense. It was a plea, small and wet, into a live mic. Bianca, come on. We built this together. You can't just... We did build it together, I said. I'm keeping the part that's mine. All 60% of it. I turned to the room. The product he was about to show you is real, and it's good, and it works, and my team built it. Devin, would you finish the launch? I think we've kept everyone waiting long enough. And Devin, my careful, church-handed CFO, the conscience in the building, walked up the aisle in his good Navy jacket, past Grant, took the clicker gently out of his slack hand, and clicked to the next slide. The product. The real one. The room, after a beat, began to applaud, and it was not for Grant. Grant left before the demo finished. I watched him go out the front while the room watched a screen. Nobody stopped him. Nobody followed. The heavy front door of the Victorian swung shut behind him with a soft, final click, And that was the last time Grant Whitaker stood inside anything I owned. The money came back the following Wednesday, all $684,000 of it, wired from Halcyon Holdings, LLC, to our restored Frost account at 11:20 in the morning because Preston the attorney, once Renee sent him the ledger, wanted no part of what Grant had done and told him so in writing. The Series A came together in the spring, smaller than Grant's fantasy, $5.2 million, but real, and led by a fund that had watched a majority owner take back her company in a single night and decided that was exactly the kind of person they wanted holding the wheel. Brazos Line doubled down. Grant kept his 40% on paper, watching from the outside as it grew into something he had no hand in and no say over. The one revenge that costs you nothing and lasts forever. Prosperity he could see but never touch. It's a warm Thursday in Austin now, 8 months later, and I'm in the corner office, the one with the good window, the one Grant took, the one I took back. My name is on the glass door in vinyl letters a friend and I put up ourselves one Saturday, a little crooked, and I've refused to fix it because I like that I know the exact hand that hung it. Devin runs finance from the office next door, no longer more of a bookkeeper than a real CFO. Now our chief financial officer and holder of 2% of a company that's worth something. Renee still gets $400 a quarter and a Christmas card, and this year a bottle of something a great deal better than $19 Malbec. Tonight the whole team is on the back patio for tacos and cheap cold beer. 29 of us now, up from 4. And Alma is here, in from Corpus, telling one of the engineers the story of the fitted sheet and the perfect square. Somebody's got a Bluetooth speaker playing too loud. The string lights are on. I do the one thing I've been planning all week. I walk over to Marisol, our newest hire, 23, first real job out of school, an accounting kid from a stucco house in San Antonio, who reminds me of me so much it aches. And I hand her the plaque, the little pinewood one, World's Okayest Boss. I tell her it's the most important object in the company and that when she has her own office, she has to pass it to the next one. She laughs like she thinks I'm joking. I'm not. Then Devin taps a bottle with a key, and the patio quiets, and he looks at me, and I lift my beer. Grant had a word for me once, up on a stage, into a microphone, in front of everyone who mattered. He said I flaked out. To the flake, I said, who owned the whole thing the entire time. They drank, the lights held, and somewhere across town, in an apartment I don't think about, a man who once changed the locks was learning what it feels like to hold 40% of a door you can never walk through again.